All right. That's it, brothers. I know this chapter here goes into a lot more detail later on.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff here, man.
Yeah. We about to go to the next. Wait, let me see. We're about to go to the next 10 verses. Verse 21 to 30. Brother Paul, you go ahead, brother.
I'll read, but I got a quick question on
Yeah.
chapter 14. It says
Romans.
Corinthians. Not chapter
Oh,
14.
Corinth.
Verse 14. Verse 14. Sorry.
Oh, verse 14. Okay.
It says that the unbelieving husband has been set
Hmm.
apart by the wife, basically,
Right.
as just as the children would be set apart. So I was wondering if they're basically covered. Is that saying that they're kind of covered? Do they have a single male? Would he have a little bit more covering from a woman who is set apart by Yahuwah?
You said a
Married,
believing male
believing
would be more.
unbelieving husband. He has been he's married to a set apart wife, right? So I
Hmm.
believe it. So it's saying that the children is likening to the children, saying that the children, even though they may be too young to be believers, they're set apart. They're holy or kodesh. So I'm
Hmm.
wondering, how does that work with the husband who's an unbeliever? What extent of covering do they have in that verse?
See, the this is the covering that I believe. The covering of mercy, not the covering of um like an automatic entrance. Like you're not automatically entered into a covenant with Yah, you know. Um Here's one of the things in Psalms 23. It says, "Thou anointed my head with oil; my cup runneth over." Now he was sitting in a table. He says, "You thou preparest a table in the presence of my enemies, and thou anoint my head with oil; my cup runneth over." This is what happens a lot with Yah's people. Yah's people become the 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 conduit in which other people are blessed. Other people become blessed by Yah's people's presence, not because Yah's people are the blessing, but that Yah is in his people. And when Yah is in his people and his people demonstrate righteousness, those who are closest get to experience Yah through you in a
Mhm.
close setting. The teachings for their children, the inspired statements to their husband. That's why it says here in verse 16, you know, for what you don't you what do you know, O wife, whether you shall save your husband, or what do you know, O man, whether you should save your wife? Like you have that opportunity to actually bring them into the faith. Now, one of the things that also allows them to be covered, especially your children, is that when you enter into a covenant with Yah, the covenant is for you and your seed. So when Yah gave the covenant to Abraham, it was for his seed. His seed was to be blessed, and that Isaac's seed was going to be blessed after him. So this is another covering. It doesn't mean that they are automatically in the covenant. It
Mhm.
means that Yah is going to look over them and he is going to appeal to them the way that he did with the Israelites. Everybody that came out of Egypt didn't survive. Hebrews chapter 3 said that they died in the wilderness. You know, thousands of them died in the wilderness. In the book of Judges, millions of them died, because of rebellion. So, but the thing is, Yah kept on calling them. He kept calling them and impressing them to repent and come back to Yah. This is what we want for our children. So if our children are unbelievers and they're off, because we are in a covenant with Yah, he will go and appeal to our children the way that he appealed to Abraham's seed, you know. So that's one way of them being set apart. Is different than a wicked person that's um, destined to be destroyed. This is now he's now allowing a person to receive mercy on your behalf because you believe and someone desires to dwell with you. What's the covenant? The covenant is, I will bless those that bless you, and I will curse those that curse you. So if you have an unbelieving spouse that blesses you, then they would be blessed by Yah. So that's one of those insights that we have to recognize. That's one of those hopes as well. Like when we have children and we become believers, is like Yah is appealing to our children on our behalf. You know, so that's kind of along the lines of what that set apartness is.
Got it.
They cannot truly be set apart until they receive the Ruach, but until then, they can actually be led by their spouse's influence, you know.
Okay, that answered my question. All right, let me go
Praise
ahead and
Yah.
read the next verses.
Oh, hold on one second. I see JP's hand.
Yeah, real quick.
Paul, I
Just
still
one.
need you to read after them.
I just want to bring out the word because I know the brother Will was we were looking at that word bondage, and just to bring it out, it says according to the Strong's, to enslave, bring into or be under bondage, given, become, or make a servant or be a servant. So it's pretty interesting that in that verse 15 he says a brother or sister is not under bondage in such cases. I mean, it kind of points to that place of not you've been free from those duties as that husband now, but you're still married. I don't know. It's like you're still married in a sense, but you're freed from that bondage from those marital duties as a husband. I don't know. That's how I was
No, you're
seeing it.
not
But
married. You're not married because Yah didn't marry you. You was an unbeliever. Now, I think it's different. Like if two people were Christians, nah. If you
Right.
profess the good news of the Father and His Son, it doesn't matter what name you're using.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you're doing it on Sunday. You profess the main point of belief. This is the foundation. Now, it doesn't mean that you will mature. You can't mature unless you understand Torah. Torah is what brings you understanding of righteousness, But marriage is kind of like when you say gay marriage, like gay marriage doesn't exist because
Right.
there's no such thing as marriage if Yah did not put two people together. So you can call it whatever you want to call it, but you can't take Yah's statements, put it on someone else. It's just like unclean foods. There's no such thing as unclean foods. There's clean animals, unclean animals. There's clean animals that can be food, and there's unclean animals that can be abomination. If you eat unclean animals, you are sinning. You're not eating food. That's like if I drink car oil. I'm not drinking soda. I'm drinking car oil. Like it's what it is. We can't take terms and place it on something else that Yah didn't put it on. So marriage, you know, marriage can exist because of consummation, but as far as that bondage, they're not under Yah. If they're not under Yah, they're not under his standard. So like Xerxes could take Vashti and he could kick her out because she didn't want to listen. Yeah, he could do that because he's a Persian king and they don't follow Yah or his principles. They don't pick
Right.
up the scriptures and read it and say, I believe, but if you pick up the scriptures and you say you believe, you're making a profession to Yah. And
Right.
he's going to hold you to your belief and your standards. You see what I'm saying? So there's two totally different things. Here's another example. Naaman, when he got healed by Elisha, he told Elisha, he said, I'm got to go back and I got to go into these these pagan temples, but I know that Yahuah is the one true Elohim, you
Right,
know.
right.
And Elisha said, "You good to go." Is that true? No, the only reason why he's good to go is because he doesn't have the knowledge of what Yah wants, but he now believes. So now he can go and be an influence, but he doesn't have that restriction in his mind. Oh, I can't go into these temples. I can't eat these foods. He doesn't have all of those instructions. You
Right,
see what I'm
right.
saying? So there's no standard to him except to believe in the one true Yah. That is the only standard that Naaman had. So likewise, it's the same thing. Everybody's on different levels, so Yah is going to judge everybody based off of the level. And when you profess to believe that Yah sent his son and that this is his word, if you go against his word after professing that this is his word, you are under rebellion,
Mm, mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So marriage, a person can be married in the world, but that has no bearing with Yah, you know,
Right,
because there's no
right, right,
standards in the marriage of the world. You get married in the world, there's no standard to stay together. There's no standard to keep your vow either, you
right.
know.
Yeah.
But when
This
it
is
comes
No,
to Yah,
this is
there's a standard.
yeah, this is deep, brother. What's I came across this information, the same exact stuff that you're talking about here, and I left it alone for a while. Yeah, we did not get married as believers. We did not get married as believers. In fact, I used to be an agnostic. So just to give you a little bit, but yeah, that's all I need to say right now.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that's why when Paul is explaining, he's explaining different people's experience. So he's like, if those people who's in this situation, people who's in this situation, you know, he's trying to basically break it down. So everybody has to look at their situation and examine what is Yah doing? You know, what is Yah holding them to? And what is Yah like not what is a person doing, but what is Yah holding them to? And you know, I think everybody, you know, especially in the marriage where everybody has a different experience, you know, different you know, calling, you know, in their life, so they have to recognize and examine themselves, see what Yah requires of them. I think your brother Jacob mentioned that. So yeah. um Brother
Well,
Paul. Oh
yeah.
yeah, go ahead, JP.
Well, I just wanted. I didn't want to leave us. I didn't want to let this go past either. Verse 18 and
Right.
19, because I thought that was,
Oh
of
yeah,
course,
yeah.
we talk about circumcision, uncircumcision.
Right.
We've gotten into that. I think we got into that in Romans, maybe, or another conversation. But
Right.
19 was specific more for me, that he says circumcision is nothing and uncircumcision is nothing but the keeping of the commandments of Yahuah or
Right.
Elohim.
I know where you going to verse 18, huh?
And but I thought that was, but I'm just saying verse 19 is a beautiful verse, because
Right.
for today's modern time of church, when they say that's done away with, but then we see that he says, but the keeping of the commandments of
Yeah.
Yahuah or of Elohim, and how important
Right.
that is. And so, and then we can go back and look at that and see what are the commandments of Elohim. What are we
Right.
going to say? And so that was the part. But, we did talk about circumcision before, whether we should do it in the now physically. Is it something that's is vital, like, okay, and that conversation. But here we see that he says, let him not become uncircumcised.
Right.
So I'll leave it at that.
So yeah, those who are circumcised, let them not be uncircumcised. How in the world, if he's talking about physical Circumcision. How is he going to be uncircumcised? And then he flips it and goes into the physical. He says, is any called in uncircumcision? Meaning like you were called while you were uncircumcised. Let him not be circumcised. So now it's like he's combining the two, but then he says the commandments of Elohim. So we have to understand the difference between what Yah is calling his commandments and what Yah has put in the Torah. Everything that's commanded in the Torah is not things that he's, a lot of those things was a foreshadow of a representation that had to take place, that Yah's people had to take place or represent until a time. I think we talked about that. But if we look at circumcision, Romans chapter 4, where it talks about Abraham being called while he was uncircumcised, and he received the token of circumcision after he received the righteousness of faith. And the token of circumcision back in Genesis 17 was given as a promise of the seed that was going to come. And in Galatians chapter 3 teaches that seed was not really talking about Isaac, but the seed that will come through Abraham, which is the Messiah. And when the Messiah came, he circumcises. Well, he is a manifestation. Even though he was circumcised physically, he's a manifestation of the one whom Yah uses to circumcise the heart.
Right.
That he's always circumcised the heart. Moshe taught circumcise the heart. So it would be different if he never taught that. If he never taught that, we'll be in a lot of knives coming out.
and it does, and just to give you the verse, chapter and verse, Deuteronomy 36, chapter 30, verse 6 says, and Yahuah thy Elohim will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed to love Yahuah thy Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, that thou mayest live. So, because for a moment in my life, I know in my walk, I thought the circumcision, I was hearing all the time, circumcision of the heart was a New Testament type of a situation.
Yeah.
But when I searched the scriptures and then I found it in Deuteronomy, I said, wow. And then Jeremiah, and I was like, wow. I believe it's in Jeremiah as well. Right. And so just want to bring that out, that it is in the Torah. It's not something that happened after Messiah. So hallelujah.
In Romans chapter 2, he said that those who were circumcised was counted as uncircumcised because they were breaking Yah's commandments. And those who were uncircumcised were counted as circumcised because they were keeping Yah's commandments. So Yah's commandments is the flintstone that cuts the flesh off the heart,
There it is. There it is right there. That ought to seal the envelope and send it on its way.
It's clear when you see the separation. It's just like animal sacrifices. He keeps saying, I rather obedience rather than sacrifice. Why would he separate those two things if the animal sacrifice is just as valuable as keeping his commandments? Why would he say, I rather you keep the commandments than sacrifice? So we have to understand, he doesn't separate, I rather you keep the Shabbat than steal. He never separates those two principles that you have to do. He separates shadows from reality. I rather you demonstrate righteousness than perform a shadow, to perform a symbol to represent what I actually want you to do. So once we collect all those things that represent things, the Levitical priesthood, the physical earthly temple, the animal sacrifices, the circumcision, once we get all of those things together, and then we can actually see what those things supposed to represent, and we can do those things rather than just displaying it, and ain't nobody it's against Torah to be displaying your circumcision anyway. If you're gonna look at it as physical, you can't walk around displaying your circumcision, showing everybody you're circumcised. But you can show everybody that you're circumcised of heart, by the righteousness that you walk in. So all right, Brother Paul, I know you was waiting for a while.
Brother, let's go.
Yeah, verse 21 to 30.
Were you called while a slave? It matters not to you. But if you are able to become free, to rather use it. For he who called in the adorn while a slave is the adorn's free man. Likewise, he who is called while free is a slave of Messiah. You are bought with a price. Do not become slaves of men. Brothers, let each one remain with Elohim in that calling in which he was called. And concerning maidens, I have no command from the Adon, but I give the judgment as one whom the Adon is his compassion has made trustworthy. In his compassion has made trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think then that this is good because of the present necessity, that it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not be seek to be loosed. Are you loosed from a wife? Do not seek to be a wife. But even if you should marry, you have not sinned. But if a maiden should marry, she has not sinned. But such shall have pressure in the flesh. But I would spare you. And this, dear brothers, time is short, so that from now on, even those who have wives should be as those that had none, and those who weep as though they did not weep, and those who rejoice as though they did not rejoice, and those who buy as though they did not possess.
Mm-hmm. What you want to point out, Brother Paul?
Looking at that, what I see is as we were talking about before, Brother Yaakov was making the point to whatever we are called with, I guess we have each of one of us have a calling that Yahuwah has given to us, and it's up to the person, the person himself or herself to walk according to what the Ruach is leading you to. So if you maybe if at the point in time, like we are at a critical time right now, and some may not feel necessity to get married. The single ones may have that thing, but they may not feel the necessity. They may think that it's more of a time to put focus on Yahuwah's work because it's a critical time right
Absolutely.
now. So whatever position he's called you to operate in, then we have to give focus on that, and not. Some may say, well, why don't you get married? But you could that's not my calling right now at the moment. So I'm just gonna wait and follow
Yeah,
what Yahuwah is commanding me. So
absolutely.
that's my takeaway.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely the circumstances of his day. In verse 26, it says, I suppose therefore that it is good for this present distress. My version says distress or necessity for what's going on. The present necessity, like what's happening at this present time, this is needed. This suggestion is needed. And like you said, you're looking around what's going on. We got to be a little bit more careful with decisions on getting married, especially when Messiah describes the last days as people marrying and giving in marriage, buying and planting and building, and they're not really focusing on Yah's desire for them. You know, it can take you away from that, especially when you end up in a situation in which one spouse is not walking the same way as you. It can bring that stress, it can bring that distress on you, you know, when you're trying to serve Yah, and he's trying to prevent, Paul is trying to suggest things to prevent any distractions at that present distress. Brother Will, you want to say something, brother? Go ahead.
Yeah. Something that you guys hear me? You hear me?
Yeah.
Therefore, in verse 26, I suppose, therefore, that this is good for present distress. I say that it is good for a man to be so. Okay. Now, verse 27 and 28, are thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loosed. Then it says, are thou loosed from a wife? Seek not a wife. But if thou marry, thou hast not sinned.
Mm-hmm.
That caught my attention there.
Right.
Yeah. But if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if
Right.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the suggestion being made because of the present time is ultimately a suggestion, but it's not a command from Yah. But he says in verse 25, he says, now concerning what he said, the virgins, mine says virgins, maidens, I have no commandment of the master, yet I give my judgment as one that obtained mercy from the master to be faithful. I'm giving this suggestion as a person that experience Yah's mercy. And he's saying, this is what is best according to the experience. Like scripture says, where there's a multitude of counsel, there's safety. But you can still get married. But when they come knocking on your door and they take your wife and tell you to serve Rome or Messiah, that's going to cause your mind to go all over the place. You have children, those of us who have children, it's already, when you think about it, it drives me crazy even thinking about it, of what my kids have to experience in this world at this present time when they get older. Hopefully they don't get that older and Messiah comes back. But if not, I can't even think about this world hurting my children, hurting their hearts, them expecting righteousness, and then they have to learn because I can't teach them experience. But anyway, that's a I try to keep my mind off of things like that and trust that Yah will circumcise the heart of my seed like he promised in Deuteronomy. So here he's just saying the present distress is obvious. People are being affected, children are being taken, spouses are being taken. He's saying it's better this way. But if you do get married, it's not don't feel, he's trying to tell you, don't feel like it's a sin to do it. It's like what Messiah said in Matthew 24. Messiah said in Matthew 24, he says, let not your flight, make sure that your flight is not on a Shabbat. And then he says, woe unto them that give suck at that time, meaning that has babies at that time. Look at the times in which persecution rose up. The time of Moshe. What did they do? They killed all the babies. What did they do when Messiah was about to be born? They killed all the babies. And Messiah says in Matthew 24, woe to them that give suck at this time. Woe to them who have babies. Because Hasatan doesn't make up new tricks. He's going to pull it back out. He's going to pull it back out right now. He's trying to kill our children right now with the TV, with video games, So it's like situation is here where would I say, hey, somebody wants to have 5 kids at this time. Hey, 5 kids, I would suggest not because of any other reason, but because of our present time. I would say calm
Exactly.
down. You know,
That,
I wouldn't say it's a sin, but I would say calm down,
yeah,
Um,
it's a battle for sure for those of us that have children. Mine are getting up there closer to 18, but I've certainly had the opportunity to experience that battle that you're describing. And I know those of us that have children here that are young, we're trying to protect our kids from this madness that's constantly exposed to them, especially if your children are in the public school system and they're not being homeschooled. That is one of the problems that led to my situation. Me trying to protect my children from all that Babylonian garbage. And so it's definitely an issue. Um, the promises in Deuteronomy you mentioned. I'm hoping down the road, my children will remember what I try to instill in
he's
them.
going to remind them. He's going to remind them. He promised that. For years, if he can remind Abraham's seed 400 years later, he could remind our children. He can remind them. He promised. That's the only thing that we got to hold on to is Yah's promises. That's it. you know. So even man's promises, that's why when you get, whenever I officiate a wedding, I I give a study on the vow. You don't make a vow to each other. You make a vow to Yah about each other. And Yah will require it at your hand to fulfill your vow. You don't make a vow to the person. You make a vow to Yah that I will be with this person, that I will take care of this person. You know, you make a vow, people make vows to each other all the time and break it. But when you make a vow to Yah, he's the one that strengthens you to keep it. He's the one that requires it of you when you break it, you know. So it's people don't really, righteousness has to be understood. Like people don't really look at these things because they lie so much or they break their agreement so much that it seems like a little thing now to do it. And it's unrighteousness is unrighteousness. It's not going to change because of circumstance. I feel hurt or I feel, doesn't matter how you feel. If Yah calls us to do this, it can't go below that. You can't go below that and still say, I serve Yah. Is I trust Yah. You can't, it has to be the standard. And like Paul is going, he's going above the standard, making suggestions higher. That's not even sin, but to preserve us from becoming unrighteous. So we gotta look at righteousness like it's the main thing. Every act that we do has to reflect the righteousness. We cannot reflect disobedience, man. This is what's killing us. It's killing us. Because we think we're serving Yah and we're disobeying. That's not working. It's not working. You know, that's what we've been doing when we was in the churches. They saying, yeah, you love Jesus, yeah, but I could still go to the club at the same time and break Yah's commandments. Like, no, you can't bring that now. Now that you're following Torah, you can't do that. Either way, even in Christianity, there's a standard that you can bring up. When I was in Christianity, I was bringing up the standard, like, hey, what you guys doing? Now that I'm in Torah, the standard is, I see where the standard actually is with righteousness. Every thought, every act, every word has to reflect Yah's righteousness. But there is pain. There's pain, but there's hope in Yah's ability. He, just like he was able to convince you He's able to convince your seed. He's able to even convince your wife, or even if there was a separation, he's able to convince your ex, because he desires for them to be saved. So this is a time, sometimes there's this tarrying time or prolonging time for you to exercise that trust, to gain that peace in his promises, rather than what he wants us to have the peace in his promises, rather than peace in him always stepping in. But him promising to step in is something that we gotta also be trusting in. Abraham loved Lot. Lot was his son. That was his son. It was his nephew, but that was like his son. Lot went over there. He got kidnapped. What happened? Abraham went. He got him. He got him. Brought him back. Said, "What you want to do?" He said, "I'm going back to Sodom." Yah came, told him, "I'm about to destroy Sodom." He's like talking to Yah. He has Lot in his mind, but he's not saying it to Yah. But Yah heard him, and Yah goes and saves Lot. But does Abraham ever see Lot again? No. So all the prayers, he has to trust that Yah did it. He has to trust it, because he's not going to see him again. And then the Moabites and the Ammonites pop up later on trying to kill Israelites. He doesn't even know those is, practically grandkids. But we have to recognize that he puts us in these positions where sometimes we won't see, but we have to believe. Go ahead and kill your son. Go offer your son as a sacrifice. You like, wait a minute. This is the son that's supposed to give me countless of children. How in the world is that gonna? Doesn't matter about me seeing. Is he said it, and that's it. He said, I will circumcise your heart and the heart of your seed. That's it. That means that he's gonna go and offer that to your children. Your children are gonna be in a place one day where Yah is gonna say, "Come follow me," and they're gonna sit there and say, "This is real," and then they're gonna have to make a choice. This is better. This is better than Yah coming to these people and he's saying that I already showed you, but this is better, that he promised he's going to go to them, and we have to trust in his promises. you know Peter says that his promises is what allows us to partake in a divine nature. When we trust in his promises without seeing, we walk in it without even seeing it, and his ruach just fills us with peace, with joy, with love, all the fruits of the ruach. This is what has to be coming out of us because we trust in Yah. And that's where the test of man comes, is trusting in Yah. The test of man doesn't come in wearing ZZs or keeping a feast. The test in man comes with trusting in Yah with everything. That's the test in man. That's the test that man has. The whole duty of man is to fear Yah and keep his commandments. He's going to test us fearing him. Our fear towards him, our trust towards him, our respect, our reverence towards him, he's going to test that. Do you respect me? Do you reverence me? Do you fear me? Do you love me? You trust me? I'm going to test that. The result is the commandments. JP got his hand up.
Oh, I thought Jacob had his hand up. He don't got it up no more. Okay. He ain't ready.
I think the brother Jadiel brought it out. The Ruach is always content with that.
Hallelujah.
Praise Yah. Praise Yah.
No, that's beautiful. I appreciate that conversation. But I was wanting to. I just thought, when I was looking at verse 21, art thou called being a servant, care not for it, but if thou mayest be made free, use it rather. For he that is called in the master, being a servant, is the master's free man. Likewise, also he that is called being free is Messiah's servant. You are bought with a price. Be not ye the servants of men. It's interesting. I know Paul, he speaks like this, Like he gives these two different areas, and you're like, what the? Like, what did he just tell me? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, like what are you saying?
Spiritual. He's mixing faith and works in these statements. He's showing the spiritual and the physical, they have to be manifested together. You know, they're not separated. That's one of the things about people think about Paul. They get so caught up thinking he's talking spiritual, and they get caught up with the physical statements, and they don't know where it is. So when you look at it, it says, "Are you a physical slave?" Don't worry about that, but worry about you being made free and use the fact that you're a slave. Verse 22, for he that is called in the master a slave is the master's free man. So you see, he who is physically a slave is the master's free man. Likewise, he that is free physically is the master's servant. You were bought with a price. Do not be servants. Now he's talking spiritually, because he just said that a free person is a servant. You were bought with a price. Be not servants of men. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, where therein abide with Elohim. There you go again, talking about where you was called. So wherever position you're in, when you was called by Yah in that position, that's why earlier he says, if you're married when you're called, don't run away from the marriage, but use it, because it can possibly save your marriage and your children. So that's what he's saying here again. If you're a slave, don't worry about being a slave when you become in the master, but use it to glorify Yah. This is what Joseph did. When he became a slave, he used it to glorify Yah. When he went to prison, he used it. When Peter went to prison, they used it. They used the fact that they were in the prison, and they changed the situation around from where they were. They didn't say, I got to get out of here. Let me get out of here. No, they used every situation that they were in to manifest Yah's truth, Yah's power. So that's what this is talking about. It's a combination of whatever. If you are with Yah spiritually, use what you're doing physically to show that he's in you spiritually. You know, this is what's going to benefit the people around you. This is how your cup runneth over and goes to other people.
Right,
you know,
right.
We don't run away. We never run away. We use it.
Yeah. No, and I was thinking that way about comparing like the country we live in compared to like China or a third world country that has more of a grip on people. You know, right. I know people say, "Oh, we're slaves in America," and all that. I said, "Man, I'm free. I've been free since I came to Yahusha. He said, I'll set you free." You know what I mean?
Right.
But I understand the concept.
That's right.
I understand the concept about
right,
you know,
right.
But being free, and I was thinking about how we're free in America to go and read our Bibles in a park, or go and preach at the corner if you want. You could do these things, and you have this ability. Now, the person in China or some of these third world countries, they ain't got that ability. And I was thinking about that when you were speaking, because I wanted to make sure I was on the same mindset of, you know what I mean?
That applies.
Yeah,
that definitely applies. You know, everybody in this world, two different situations. You know, some are servants, some are slaves, some are bond. It's funny because if you're bound or bond in jail, you're free in Messiah, even though you're in jail still.
Right.
You know, so every situation all over the world is reflected in Scripture. It's not like, you know, when some people, they call it, you know, the white man's religion. Like this is consuming every situation that occurs in life, you know, and he's telling us how to walk in Messiah in that particular life that we are in.
Right.
Right. Like sometimes when I get to talking with some folks in this walk, man, I don't know about anybody else, man, but it just, I feel like they're enslaving themselves to a point where you're starting to pat down the integrity of what our Messiah has done for you, the liberation of coming to him. Because I tell people, I say, listen, I am no slave of nobody. Okay? We are scattered. We know what's going to happen. At the end, we're going to be brought back into the land. But why do you continue to put yourself to a level that you should not be putting yourself when you serve a mighty Yah that has freed you?
Right.
You know, your royal priesthood. I mean, you're set apart. You know, you may be temporarily, put under certain bondages that was just described here from the physical aspect, but from a spiritual aspect, I'm free, man. I'm free from the bondage of this world. I am a free living soul. Celebrate that, embrace it.
Right.
Don't take away from what Yah has done for us through his son.
Absolutely. Look, when Yahusha was here on this earth, in regards to being free, he went to the temple, right? And he said, who's supposed to be paying taxes to go to the temple? The children or the stranger? He said, the stranger. And he said, okay, pay the taxes. Yahushua had to pay the taxes to go to a temple that was his father's house, made for him and for the nations to be a house of prayer. But he has paid taxes to go in his own place. You see what I'm saying? But he paid taxes. Does that mean that he was enslaved and trapped? The Romans were there too. Does that mean he was trapped and enslaved? No. The only thing he was seeing that was trapping and enslaving people was sin. And that's what's starting to happen. People are coming out of it, and then they're being deceived to create an enslavement in their mind again. They're coming out of it, and then they're creating it in their mind. And Yah is trying to free us in here, as we just read. If you're a serpent, if you're a slave, don't worry about it. You're made free. Use the fact that you're a physical slave. If we're here on this earth, it's not, I remember when I was younger and I was preaching on a train and doing these different things, and I'll get this like euphoric feeling like, man, I just want to leave. I just want to go to be with the master. I just want to die and all that stuff. And I realized that's a young-minded thing. Yah wants to use me. And Paul said, I want to be dead so I could be with the master, but I'm torn, he said. I'm torn between dying and knowing that I'm going to be with the master and being here so I can help you. This is what he was torn with. And we need to be torn with that same thing. Yah wants to glorify himself on this earth through me. So I want to use as much time and energy and strength to do that, rather than cutting Yah's time short using me. It says, it's not I that live, but the Messiah that lives in me. And yet I'm talking about, man, I just want to leave this earth. But then it's like, the Messiah is trying to live in you. What are you trying to die for? So it showed that when the maturity comes in, then we start to recognize responsibility. And when the responsibility kicks in, then we start to look at one another as the responsibility, because we are his focus. So once we mature, we become each other's focus as well. And then we have to tell each other the truth. We have to help each other when we're down. We have to lift each other up, when we get a chance to, So this is the responsibility, that we have for each other, for the house of Yah, So it's a beautiful thing when you're in any situation, you can still glorify Yah. And the scriptures teaches us that clearly. It clearly teaches it doesn't matter what situation you're in, you are free. To whom the Son makes free, you are free indeed. Period. Don't walk around talking about you are slave. You are not in bondage. You are free. Even when they went to Babylon, you know what's crazy? They went to Babylon. You know, they did whatever they wanted in Babylon. Yah got them to a certain point. There was a lot of years in which they had to deal with certain things. Yah got them to a point where when the Persian Empire came, they could have went back to Jerusalem long time ago. Cyrus was the first king. He told them, go back to Jerusalem. They didn't go. Then Darius, go back to Jerusalem. And then Xerxes, he says, go back to Jerusalem. I'll give you everything you need to rebuild Jerusalem. And then that's when Nehemiah went, because they still didn't go. So Nehemiah went there. He's just like, you still ain't build the wall yet? Come on, let's do this. So they could have left long time ago. They were free from that captivity, but they just stayed. They just stayed until Nehemiah was like, nah, let's go and do what Yah told us to do. Let's rebuild this temple. And then that's when Ezra got everybody ready and then they left. So we need to realize we can't be thinking that we're some type of making ourselves bound when even in physical bondage, we're free and we can make others free in that situation instead of looking at the situation so much that it just makes other people become enslaved mentally with you. We have to keep that love, joy, peace, meekness, humbleness, self-control, allow his ruach to flourish with his fruit in us. um Brother Brian, you had your hand up.
No, yeah, I was just thinking about what you were saying just now about how like history has a way of repeating itself. There's a few, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we was doing, JB calls them freestyle fellowship, where we was talking about Jeremiah 23 and the second Exodus. And I was thinking about that, and I was talking to my mom about it before a while back, how like, I was like, you know what, it'll be interesting, like if that happened in our lifetime, and how many people would choose to stay in their respective countries and be like, no, this is all I know. Like, for example, we're in America. It's like when that time comes, and like Jeremiah 23 describes, it's like I think it's gonna be the same thing that you just described. People gonna be like, I'm gonna chill here. I ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay here and stuff. And then yeah, so it's gonna be interesting. Just thinking about that, like, because I think that's gonna happen again, where people have to. It's like people gonna be faced with that choice. Do I stay here in my native? All I know is America, or wherever you're at. It's like, or do I trust Yah and move with his ruach and everything? So it's just interesting.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna be tested by. That's the main test. How can we be faithful servants and he hasn't tested our faithfulness yet? He has to test our faithfulness. If he tested Abraham's faithfulness, there's no way we're getting out of that test. There's no way. He tested Abraham's faithfulness and we're supposed to be children of Abraham. There's no way we're getting out of that test. Even Messiah went through that test of faithfulness. When you read Romans, it talks about partaking in his sufferings. So if we think we can get out of that test and just be relaxing on this earth, no, not gonna happen. All right, let me finish the last 10 verses and then we discuss that and then close. This study is gonna be long. We're on 1 Corinthians 7. We're looking at verse 30. I want to read a little bit up. I want to look in verse 28. and go down, because there's some important statements in those things to give us more context. It says in verse 28 down to 40, it says, but and if you marry, you have not sinned. But if a maiden marry, she has not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh. But I spare you. But this I say, brethren, the time is short. It remains that both they that have wives be as though they had none, and they that weep as though they weep not, they that rejoice as though they rejoice not, they that buy as though they possess not, and they that use this world as not abusing, for the fashion of this world passes away. But I would have you without carefulness, without anxiousness. He that is unmarried cares of the things that belong to the master, how he may please the master. But he that is married cares for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. There is a difference between a wife and a maiden, or a virgin, unmarried woman. The unmarried woman cares for the things of the master, that she may be set apart both in body and in spirit, in mind. But she that is married cares for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. This is talking about the obligation that's in marriage. There is an obligation from Yah in marriage. Verse 35, it says, this I speak for your own benefit, not that I may cast a trap upon you, but for that which is comely, and that you may attend upon the master without distraction. But if any man think that he behaves himself uncomely towards his maiden, if she pass the flower of her age and need so require, let him do what he will. He does not sin. Let them marry. Nevertheless, he that stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but has power over his own will, and have so decreed in his heart that he will keep his maiden, he does well. So then, he that gives her in marriage does well, but he that does not give her in marriage does better. The wife is bound by law as long as her husband lives, but if her husband be dead, she is at freedom or liberty to be married to whom she will, only in the master. But she is happier if she abides after my judgment, according to my opinion. And I think also that I have the Ruach of Elohim. All right. The last 10 verses. What you guys see? What you guys see? I'm going to wait for you guys first. JP.
Well, I'll say this is an area that I did find interesting as well, as I've read this before and today, because he says, and I took it like in my own words. He's like, if you get married, like you have to please your wife, like that's your obligation,
right?
And it's interesting to see it that way, but I understand having a wife, having children, but having a wife and knowing that my attention is divided.
Yeah.
What having a wife, your attention is divided. Then you have kids. Now you got double the divided. You know what I'm saying? It's like
absolutely.
And I feel like there is more pressure, more responsibility, more scheduling you have to do because you got to still you still got to be in the scriptures. You still got to pray. You still got to, stay focused on Yahuah. But at the same time, to me, I've started to look at it like it's a greater response. To me, it becomes a greater responsibility in that way. When you're single, I don't know. I find it a little bit easier. I'm like,
it's easier. And that's what he meant. And that's what he meant by better. He's not saying better like this is a better I'm getting more blessing this way. No, he's saying it's easier, considering the what does it say in verse the trouble in the flesh in verse 28. The time is short in verse 29. Constantly talking about what's happening at that time. It's easier, he was saying, not better, like this is a higher rank of, no, he's saying this is easier in this time, because during the time of Solomon, they had rest from their enemies for like 40 years. Nobody was fighting, no wars, and everything was flourishing. That's what was happening during Solomon's time. I can't imagine somebody preaching this during Solomon's time. Absolutely not. But during the time of Jeremiah, you hear the difference. He probably like, listen, give yourself to bondage because of your iniquity. This is a totally different situation. No more rest. Put yourself in that situation and hold on to Yah. Here, he's saying, avoid this situation because of the present persecution and stress, and time is short. But don't feel like it's a sin to do so. He would look at what it says here. People were being betrothed. They were betrothing women, and because of the situation, they're just walking through life like partners, And it says here in verse 36, it says, if any man think he behave himself uncommonly toward his maiden, like it says virgin. It's talking about a unconsummated woman. If she passed the flower of her age, talking about if he's there betrothed her for years and haven't consummated, he's saying, let him do what he will. He's not sinning. Let them marry. Now remember verse 1. This is based off of things that were being told to him about what they were doing. So he's giving them comfort, telling them it's not sin because they probably thought they should not do it. They probably thought it was against Yah. Where does it say? Verse 37, nevertheless, he that stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, will have the power over his own will. Meaning, like, remember in the beginning of the chapter, it talked about those who had no control of themselves, let them get married. Here it says, if you have power over your own will and have decreed in his heart that he will keep his maiden or his virgin, he does well. And then it goes into, now daughters. This is my verse here. Verse 38, this is my verse. It says here, so then he that gives her in the marriage does well, but he that does not give her in the marriage does better. I'm doing better for my daughter. But but this is very important for us to understand. The situation that he's trying to show is there's a lot of responsibility when you enter into these covenants that Yah, according to verse 39 and 40, Yah is going to hold you to that vow. He's going to hold you to that vow until you die. And when you're free, what does he tell you to do? Even if you're free from marriage, he's saying, in this situation, please stay unmarried and focus on Yah. That's why it says here earlier, he's talking about the best scenario where he says, those that are married to be as though they are not. What verse is that? Verse 29. It says, but I say, brethren, time is short. It remains that both they that have wives be as though they had none, It doesn't mean ignore your obligation. Let me fix that first. It doesn't mean act like you're not married. No. It means also incorporate the way that the person that's unmarried lives as well. So just like they were focused on Yah without distraction, those who are married, set up your home in which your whole family is not distracted, is focused on Yah, especially during distressing times. So I would suggest, even in our time, that we work on our family, help our minds to focus on serving Yah. Encourage your spouse, encourage your wife to serve Yah with all of her heart, all of her mind, and not be distracted. Don't be a distraction to your wife. Don't be a distraction to your kids, you know. And likewise, show them so that way they can reciprocate, not be a distraction to you, you know. But pushing us, everyone pushing each other towards serving Yah and serving the Master. You know, this is what Paul is desiring for everybody to do that's married, to be as though they're not, meaning try to set up your home where you don't have any distractions, you know, because it's going to come and time is short still. You don't want to get caught unprepared because we got consumed with the entangled with the foolishness of this world, you know. Go ahead, brother JP.
Well, I mean, and I think that's interesting wording that he uses in verse 33. He said, "But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife."
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we could definitely, you know, it's this, even the simple things of going and eating somewhere. It's like, I want to, hey, where you want to eat? You want to eat something good? Like we haven't had nothing good all month or whatever. You know what I mean? It's time to go eat some good food. What do you want to eat? And you're like, those are things of the world, because it's really not something that's a necessity. You can eat the same thing you always been eating, and those are like little simple things that I could see, like, you know, it could be painting your house, you know, a new color, like, you know, maybe you've been like, oh man, you know, whatever it is. And so it's interesting that Paul says, you know, because he does say ahead in verse 31, he says, and they that use this world as not abusing it, you know, for the fashion of this world passeth away. So he does speak in 31 about abusing the things of this world, it seems like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I think the wording is interesting in 33 about, but he that is married care for the things that are of the world, says of the world, how he may please his wife, because it also says that about the husband in 34, but she that is married care for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. So I was kind of wondering what some of your thoughts on that. Is it more like, what is that, you know, in that sense, you know, is it really items of the world, things that are of that day? You know, I don't know what was happening at this time, but I know what's happening this nowadays, you know. So what's some of your thoughts on that, and those portions of wordings he used? Cared for the things of the world.
Yeah, I think it's referring to the necessities, especially in that situation, because your necessities change when you get married. Your necessities change when you have children. You know, like me, if I was by myself, I'll be at your couch, JP, and then I'll be at Will's couch, and I'll be in Brian's couch, and I'll probably go over to Jacob's couch, and back down to Paul's. So that's that's my perspective. That's what's going to be my desire if anything changes. But because I'm involved in an obligation to my wife and children, I have to focus on the things of this world that supports them. You know, I have to care about money to pay bills. I have to care about certain things for safety for my children. I have to care about, food, appliances to make sure that I feed my kids food. I have to care about those things, and that's what he's saying about if you use this world and not misusing it or abusing it. And he says the fashion of this world is passing away. Like everything is passing away that's in this world. But I have to use these things because I'm in the situation. When Messiah sent out his disciples that was, going out two by twos, he told them not to even take a second shirt. He told them, don't take a second shirt, don't take another pair of shoes, don't even take a bag of money. Go to whoever's house accepts you. You go there, you bless their home. That's what he said. I'm not doing that with my wife and 5 kids. Like it can't happen that way. Now it's funny because now when I go to people's house, I'm concerned about worldly things still. I'm like, are my kids breaking these people's houses, or are they being respectful to the people? Are they, are they flushing the toilet after they use the bathroom? Are they washing their hands? They cough and cover your mouth. You have to worry about the things of this world, but not worldly things like lust of the flesh, pride of life. None of those worldly things we have to worry about, but just earthly necessities. We have to worry about those things. If I was alone, I wouldn't have any of these worries, because the way I was living before, it was like about to go in that direction. Then I got married. So, um, so that's what I see it saying. It's definitely emphasizing on what they said they were struggling in as well, because they sent him the letter. He was responding to what they were struggling about, what they were dealing with. So he was trying to give them suggestions based off of inspiration from Yah, of course, as to what could be the best advice for these people in their situation. And I think that the like what Brian said earlier, history repeating itself. We're in a situation, or we're getting to a situation in which we may have to instruct people to chill and not worry about that. We may have to tell our children, don't worry about a spouse. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just telling you we have to tell our children to focus on something else. There's a lot of people, they grow up thinking about marriage and children, and kids really, focus on that. And we may have to redirect their mind to focus on serving Yah. And if Yah calls them to do that, that'll be something different, but we have to show them, like, you got these vaccines coming in, they're forcing vaccines. I don't know. I don't even want to be thinking about this stuff right now. Brian had his hand up, and then Brother Will.
I don't know. I was just what you said was really good. I was just thinking about like when he was mentioning. It's interesting because it's like I'm a single man, and just listening to what y'all are talking about, like being married and stuff.
Scared you?
I'm like, it's like weird because sometimes I think about how it would be nice to have a wife and be married and have like not be alone all the time. And then when nice. the way y'all talk, it's like, man, maybe it's not so bad after all.
One is nice, one is easier. Easier, harder. Nice, harder. Easier, nice also. So you're blessed too. It's easier. Think about this, Brian. Make sure I counsel you before there's any decisions being made. All right, brother?
Oh, well, yeah, there's no decisions being made right now.
Okay. Easier. Yeah, easier is good. But like, it's not a sin to to be in something is still a blessing, you know, especially if two people are serving Yah. That's the way it's supposed to be. When two people are serving Yah, the blessing is magnified. You know, the same thing while Yah sending people out 2 by 2s. When I was with my brothers in New York, and I was out there, you know, preaching on the train and stuff, it was just sharing that with them, you know, was like a blessing. You know, it was like, it would be different if I was by myself. I have a lot of situations by myself, but when I was with them, like, I remember it. It's like, I remember that time with them because I was with them. You know, we experienced it together, you know. So it's like this. There's no way I'm going to forget Assembly of Yahuah if something happened. No way I could forget Assembly of Yahuah. It's impossible because we experienced things together that's like a imprint in our memory, in our history, you know. So that's what a marriage is as well. It's like someone entering in, or two people entering into each other's history, where they leave an imprint that can't be changed, you know. But it is easier.
Interesting though. Like, I was thinking about like what he mentioned earlier about like consenting for a time to be apart, to
right,
in the interest of maintaining your spiritual relationship with the Most High. Whereas if you're single, I don't have to ask nobody permission to fast or
exactly
anything like that.
easy.
So, yeah, so interesting.
Just say it. Easy, man. Let it be easy as long as possible, because all things are possible now. All things are possible. All things are not easy, though. Like I talked about Solomon. Solomon had it easy. Y'all kept him from war for like 40 years. But don't say that to Jeremiah now. Jeremiah didn't have it easy. Don't say it to Daniel. Daniel didn't have it easy. You know, and the 144,000 in the last, they're not going to have it easy at all. You know,
well, talking about not having it easy, Solomon had over 700 wives and concubines.
He OD'd in his easiness. He was easy. He was easy.
Man, I don't even know. I was like,
all right, let me not.
If you were talking about being divided earlier, divided your attention, that's so divided, you end up losing yourself.
Right, and that's what he did. That's what he did. Overindulged. He didn't do what it says in 1 Corinthians. He didn't gain self-control. He lost his self-control, you know, in overindulging. And yeah. So I don't want to. It's getting late. I may say some silly stuff on the record. I'm gonna just let's go to Will. Brother Will.
Getting late. Me up here. Hey, Brian, don't go nowhere, man. Take that mountain off of there. You are ahead of the game, my brother. Brother Brian, you are ahead of the game, man. You are replicating Shaul, man, as he walked, and trust me, man.
Well, I got a ways before I get to Shaul level.
No, I know. I'm just being humorous, you know, but you know what I mean. It's amazing. But I have a question about Shaul there. If anybody, is there any kind of any kind of meat that we can grab in scriptures where he might have been married at some point, at any time, at any point?
Well, this is a speculation, but it's based off of, you know, inference, right? So he said he was a Pharisee in Romans chapter 9. He said he was a Pharisee of Pharisees. A Pharisee was a member of the Sanhedrin. According to historically, the Pharisees and Sadducees was a part of the Sanhedrin, and in order to be a part of the Sanhedrin, you would have to be married. You know, so that's the assumption that they would make. There's no other clear evidence besides him saying he was a Pharisee, and him being a Pharisee, he would have to be a part of the Sanhedrin and married. to be a part of that group. But yeah, that's kind of along the lines of why people think he was married.
Yeah.
Peter was married.
Yeah, Peter was married. All right, that was it. It's getting late.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Florida, Brian. I got this coat. The steam is coming out of me, and I'm in Florida, man. So
what? How? Okay, let's hold on. Let's pray and close. Let's pray. Dear Father, we want to thank you so much for your word and for your instruction, and even the wise counsel that you've given to us by Brother Shaul in your word. Father, we just ask that you help us to recognize the things that you want us to do individually, the things that you want us to do, and examine ourselves to make sure that we're walking in line with you and your inspiration and not walking based off of our own emotions and desires. Father, help us to submit ourselves to you and to your word and to your spirit. Father, we thank you so much for everything that you've done. I ask that you bless these brothers and allow their minds to be open to your desire of practical ways that you can apply your word to their lifestyle and their thinking. Father, I thank you so much, and I just ask that you strengthen each one of us, Father, to walk uprightly. And we have these struggles, and we just ask for your help, Father, to teach us your ways. And we thank you again for this opportunity. In the name of your Son, we pray. Hallelujah. Amen.
Sorry.
Shalom, Akuti, and Brohim. Thank you so much for viewing this video. We hope it was helpful to your walk in the truth. Remember to always search the scriptures on your own, to study Abba's word and show yourself approved, according to 2 Timothy 2:15. We invite you to study with us. To join us in a live study, just go to our website at assemblyofyahuah.com and click the Join Us tab. We have something available Wednesday through Saturday of every week. If you've been Baruch or blessed by this video today or any other study, we encourage you to go to the Giving tab on our website. Our elders all have their own ways of income, so none of the giving or proceeds go to them. Instead, it goes to biblical assembly needs. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss any new videos. We sincerely pray that Abba continues to direct your path as you acknowledge him in all your ways. Much avaha, and again, shalom.